And I think that we shouldn't worry so much because I just don't see an alternative. So instead of telling me how bad this is because you think about your own life and how it would be bad if you had debt to GDP of 100, I get it. As a country, give me the alternative country. But just start with that. Can you answer that question? What is the alternative country?
Today we have Chamath on the All In podcast, expressing his concerns about the current state of the economy and why financial markets are in for a rude awakening. Chamath highlights the concerning trend of escalating national debt in the US, driven by rising interest rates and increased fiscal spending. This growing debt burden poses a major challenge as the government desperately needs a contingency plan. Amid the burgeoning debt crisis and stock market volatility, investors are seeking alternative ways to preserve and grow their wealth. Chamath has discussed extensively that cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin have gained popularity as a hedge against economic uncertainties. Bitcoin's decentralized nature and limited supply make it an attractive asset to safeguard against inflation and currency devaluation, particularly appealing to those concerned about the massive amount of money that's been printed just in the last few years. As traditional investments lose appeal due to rising interest rates and crowding effects, more investors are now turning to Bitcoin as a viable and secure alternative. Let's get right into the latest interview with Chamath, as he gives his market prediction for 2023 and what the economy can expect in the last half of the year. Don't forget to share your thoughts and comments down below, and leave a like if you enjoy the content we do here.
This is a pretty striking chart, and I think I showed this before. This is federal government interest payments that are being made. We're now up to, $1 trillion. The chart, as you can see, a year has spiked. And by the way, that number is spiking further, and we'll talk about this in 1 second, as a result of rising interest rates and increased fiscal spending. So this is now becoming a pretty sizable part of our budget. And as of now, paying the interest on our debt is a larger capital outlay for the federal government than defense spending. The second chart shows what happened in the last week, which is that 30-year treasuries have been sold off. And as that's happened, treasury yields have climbed. So there's been about a 10% decline in pricing and a concurrent nearly 10% increase. And Bill Ackman, basically said today that he's shorting 30-year treasuries. He thinks we're going to go to 5.5% long-term rates. Currently, the 30-year treasury is sitting at 4.3. And remember, I told you guys this after this thing I went to a few weeks ago, that there were two prominent economists who shared that they think we're going to be facing long-term rates in the 5 to 7% range, very long-term rates for a very long period of time, that it is a new fiscal regime. This is a report made by the Treasury Borrowing Advisory Committee of the Treasury Department. And it said since the advisory committee convened in May, 2-year treasury yields are about 100 basis points higher, while 10-year treasuries have increased by about 40 basis points. The bank holdings of non-mortgage-backed government securities, mainly treasuries, have actually declined by $146 billion so far this year. So that means banks are selling off their treasuries. The committee goes on to say, at the same time, treasury investors have noted the treasury supply will need to increase to address the rise in public deficits as tax revenues have come in weaker and government spending has increased. Rates are climbing. As a result, we need to borrow more. And this is a perfect manifestation of the debt spiral problem that we've talked about multiple times. Our fiscal spending outlay and the rising interest rates combine to create an insurmountable debt spiral that is now manifesting in the fact that we need to sell $2 trillion of treasuries. And here's the crazy statistic that they said. In reviewing recent demand for US treasuries in auctions, the committee noted that an increasing percentage of supply is being absorbed by investment funds, while foreign participation has remained range-bound. That means as we're trying to sell more treasuries, foreign governments are buying fewer of them, which means that the US currency as a reserve is no longer the place that everyone wants to plow their money as much as it used to be. It is in decline. Now, the other thing I want to share, which I think is absolutely critical, is how do we address this gap? The one way is these entitlement programs. And so several Republican presidential candidates, Nikki Haley, Ron DeSantis, and Mike Pence, have all publicly stated on the campaign trail that they're promoting programs to cut Social Security benefits for people that are 30 and 40 years old. And here's the response to that. So they've gone out and they've started saying that. A poll was done. And on that poll, 82% of voters oppose the push to cut Social Security for Americans under 50. 82%. So where is this going to take us? This is what is so scary to me, J-Cal. I'm not an American declinist. I believe in the American system. It benefited me and my family. But I do worry that we find ourselves in a whirlpool that is very hard to get out of because The populace says we don't want to make the cuts that are necessary in order for us to save ourselves. That's what's so scary to me.
Let me just state what I think about the downgrade. It's irrelevant. The S&P did it 13 years ago. Fitch is a marginal credit rating agency. They're at a minimum 13 years late. At a maximum, they're just anxiety-ridden like other people are, who are always screaming that the sky's falling. So that's my first point. The second point, and the more important one, is that none of you who are always freaking out about this understand this conversation about relativism. All of these conversations are relative. You can deal with them in absolutes. On a relative basis, Japan's debt to GDP is 270% and growing. On a relative basis, our debt to GDP is half of that. We are the most important economic force in the world. It is going to continue to be the most economic force in the world. And all I see actually on every single monetary basis is every other country struggling more than we are. So my question to all of the Chicken Littles is, what do you do if you're a central government where you have to have foreign reserves? Do you all of a sudden double down on the euro? Do you double down in the yuan, which is basically a proxy for doubling down in the US dollar? What are you supposed to do? And I never get a good answer because on a relative basis, the US will still continue to do well. I think that debt to GDP is a red herring for a lot of people. And I think that the way that people run their personal lives, which should take income to debt into consideration, I don't think applies as much to governments. And I think these things are going to march forward as a group. There's not going to be a single G8 country that all of a sudden moves away and starts printing surpluses. It happened almost as an accident, an aberration during the Clinton administration. It'll never happen again. And I think that we shouldn't worry so much because I just don't see an alternative. So give me, instead of telling me how bad this is because you think about your own life and how it would be bad if you had debt to GDP of 100, I get it. As a country, give me the alternative country. But just start with that. Can you answer that question? What is the alternative country?
Investors see cryptocurrencies as valuable diversification tools in their portfolios, offering non-correlated investments to offset potential losses in traditional markets. The perceived lack of direct correlation with conventional assets makes cryptos appealing to risk-averse investors seeking to mitigate market volatility. The decline in foreign governments' demand for US Treasuries also suggests a shift away from the US dollar as a reserve currency. This trend may drive these governments to explore alternative stores of value, especially cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin, potentially surging the interest and demand for digital assets globally. Amid economic uncertainties, Bitcoin's safe haven characteristics and diversification attracts increasing interest and investment in the crypto space. With a growing uncertainty in the future economic landscape, cryptocurrencies are making massive waves in the last part of 2023. What do you think about the latest interview with Chamath? And what are your thoughts on crypto reshaping traditional financial systems heading into 2024? Comment down below. Thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe for more content just like this. We'll see you in the next video.